as you can see, voila. Do not hesitate if you want to have a question focused on this part. So voila. So here, it's a grape of Cabernet Sauvignon, this one, with the bunches that you can see, which are really dark and black. So that's, of course, you remember I said the veraison. So the veraison is the time when the bunch change. Of course, it has to be with a regular color, but at the end, the most important thing will be to taste them, as I told you, because inside, especially the seeds, might be green, and if they are green, especially for a red wine, for example, you will be in trouble because we will give you unmatured tannins or things like this. So after, when we have decided the date of the harvest, I will call an harvester, and we will always work during the night, never during the day. It's a question. The grape looks very large. Is that good or bad? The question about it depends on the grape. Some of them, like the Vermentino, will produce big berries. Just to give you a base of comparison, the weight of a bunch of Chardonnay is around 160, 170 grams. A bunch of Vermentino or a bunch of Grenache could go up to 500 or 600 grams. So if someone joined me on a previous online tasting, we were talking about the way we prune. And of course, when you have a grape like the Vermentino, you need to reduce the number of buds, to reduce the number of bunches, because if you have too many bunches, you have a yield. You will have a yield which is too high. What you need dominate the x-axis on your graph. How sensitive is this process to time? Say in days. It's in days, exactly, Michael. It's in days. So you see, as I told you, the veraison period is about 30 days. 30 to 35, and after, depending on the choice, on the quality choice, I can try to keep them 10 or 12 days more, especially for the reds. Because the question will be the tannins and the maturity of the skin. It's a bit less important when we talk about the whites, because the whites is mostly produced with the juice. So the skin is important if you do a skin maceration or thing like this, but not as much as it is for a red wine. The skin will be the key point for the red with the seeds. Voilà. Because
you would look for typically the harvester, because again we don't have our own harvester anymore. We sold it off because it was too old and not good, so we now rent a service. But you would really look for it on a specific day, or maybe a day before or a day after, but you're not, a week after would be disastrous. We're looking within 1 or 2 days. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm always obliged to stay in contact with them to make sure that they will be available on the right time. And of course we are under pressure sometimes because like with rain expected or things like this, everybody wants to harvest at the same time. So sometimes I'm obliged to change my plan and to decide to work in the middle of the night instead of but not this year, for example, only one day. Most of the time I try to start around 4:30 in the morning, but sometimes we could start at 2 a.m. in the morning if the harvester is not available at the right time or things like this. Wow.
Just to explain this photo is, the reason this is in daytime is that hand harvesting you don't do at night because you might cut your finger off. So we only do hand harvesting in the day.
Yes, but it's a red wine, so it's a Grenache. This one was a Grenache, and it's a bit less important because you arrive at the end of September. The temperature outside is not as high as it is at the end of August. So you work in the morning, and your objective is to bring the grapes not too hot, of course, but it won't be as important as it is for a white. For a white, it has to be really cold. The perfect temperature is around 15 Celsius degrees, the juice. And it's impossible to get a temperature like this during the day. So that's the reason why we work during the night. But for the reds, 18 or 20 might be okay. And the temperature inside the bunch is never the same as what you have outside. You always have a gap of time, which is about 2 hours. So for example, when it's around 15 degrees at 8 a.m. in the morning, the juice will be probably 13. Voilà, so you can work till 9 a.m., 10 a.m., sometime 11. Voilà.
Steve has asked, and I think this is when we had the picture of the Cabernet Sauvignon up, or it could have been when the bucket was up. The grapes look very large. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Alors, you mean the berries or the grape by itself?
An individual.
The bunch of...
Right. Don't know. Good question. Steve, do you want to answer that? Do you mean a bunch of grapes, or do you mean an individual grape?
Berry. Alors, of course, it has an important because it's you know, the wine is always a question of balance. Smaller will be the berries, more tannins you will have, and more concentration you will have. So you will never produce the same kind of wine depending on the kind of grapes you use. A Vermentino or a Grenache will always make something which is lighter than a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is really tiny. It's a percentage, it's a rate between the weight and the juice given by each berry. So just to give you a good comparison, normally we need, if you want to produce 100 liters, you need 130, 135 kilograms. That's the average. With a Vermentino, it will be more like 120 or 125 kilograms to produce 100 liters. And if you talk about a Cabernet Sauvignon, it will be more like 150. Voilà. After, it depends on the kind of wine you want to produce. Small berries will always make something which is more like a full-bodied wine, much stronger wine than big berries. But it's a different style. A good way to compare is just compare the style of a Grenache from Côte du Rhône or something like this with the style of a Cabernet Sauvignon from Bordeaux. It's absolutely not the same type of wine.
Actually, let's switch back. We could switch back to the Sanso, these huge grapes from the Sanso, enabling us to produce the new, very light rosé from these grapes versus here. What was that? Looks like Cabernet or something, is it?
It was on the back. It was Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. No, it was Merlot. So the white wine was Vermentino. The first one in front of the bucket was the Sanso, which is really big. And on the background, it was some different Merlot. So you see that there's a big difference. Merlot used for red wine, Vermentino for white, and Sanso for the rosé.
Very good. So I'm conscious of time. What should we move on maybe now? So that we've talked a little bit. We've seen a nice picture of the hand harvesting, which we do for the top wines. But for most of our wines, for the Advocate and the Expression range, we actually use a mechanical harvester. So what we're going to do now is show a quick video clip of the harvester this year. I think doing the Sanso, if I remember rightly.
How many are we? Alors, the harvester, as you can see, is a machine which is working on the top of the row. In fact, it's shaking the vines. It's a horizontal shaking, which put down, which removes the berries from the bunch, from the stem. I'm sorry. The objective is to get the berries without the stem as a maximum, and without the leaves. As it's also something which is sometimes which can be difficult, because if you have a wet atmosphere, you will have the leaves which are wet, and even with a fan, because on the harvester you have a big fan inside, so the berries arrive and the fan removes the leaves, because when it shakes, of course it takes some leaves, not too much, but always a bit. But if you have a perfectly dry atmosphere, the leaves will be really dry, and the fan will remove them easily, but sometimes it's a bit wet, and you will have a little percentage of leaves. So in this case, you need to decrease the speed of the harvester to work a bit slower to make sure that the fan has the time to push the leaves out from the berries. Well,
Michael is asking, Edward, Michael is asking how
yes.
efficient the harvester is. Do any of the grapes get left behind, and is there any vine left behind after all that shaking?
Alors, sometimes it could happen when you have young vines. It's a question of pruning and the position of the grapes, because the harvester will work on a base which is about a height of about 60 centimeters. So sometimes when you have bunches which are on a lower level or higher level, it could be forgotten by the harvester, but the percentage is always less than 1% on the total parcel. After it would be also the question of if I have decided the right time to harvest, because if it's not perfectly matured, some berries could stay on the stem, and if it's a bit too late, especially for the reds, some of them could become a bit dry, and if they are dry, they will stay on the stem. Some of them will stay on the stem, but most of the time it's almost perfect. We lose sometimes 1% or 1.5% if we are not lucky.
Okay, very good. So the next one, so once the harvest has done its job, it has to transfer them to the trailer that you can see here in the foreground. So we'll just play another video of that.
Voilà, so when the harvester is full, look at the big bucket on the top of the harvester. And here you see what I do, because it's me. I put some carbonic ice inside the trailer. In fact, the idea with the carbonic ice is to preserve the juice, because there's a part of the juice which is outside the berries. Look at it. Voilà. And with the carbonic ice, I will be able to preserve against the oxidation, because the carbonic gas will always stay just at the level of juice and will preserve against the oxidation. So that's strange.
Very good.
I think it's,
no, I finished the video because it was just my feet after that. So after that, then the trailer, the tractor pulls the trailer down into the winery. So we have a little video of that, and they're actually on hydraulic supports so that we can raise them up and then use gravity to feed the grapes into the presses rather than have to use a mechanical means. So here we go with the trailer. So that was that. What one of the things, as Edward will tell us about this year's harvest, is sometimes the trailers were so full of grapes that the hydraulic wasn't powerful enough to get it high enough. So we had a few little challenges, but good challenge to have.
I've been obliged to use it. Exactly, I've been obliged to use a forklift to help the trailer sometime because it was too full.
Okay, the next thing you do then is open the back of the trailer, and then the beginning, the juice, there'll be a little bit of juice in the bottom which will flow out first, and then the grapes start arriving. So we'll have that.
Here we are. Voilà. And what you see is Nick Talbot, which checks that there's no little piece of wood or no big leaves which might be inside, and he will try to remove them. before it goes inside the distemmer, which is a machine which will separate the berries from the few stems left. Because the harvester is supposed to take only the berries, but then you always have a little percentage of stems which are with it.
Quick video of the destemmer.
Yeah. Voilà, so you see the machine. So it's like a big tube with holes. Alors, in fact, here what you see is the stem, but the berries are falling down before. Voilà, so it separates everything, and you have only the berries which will arrive in the pneumatic press.
Which is a good segue to the press. Edward, that was it. Are you with us? Or have we lost you?
No, I'm here. I'm still here, but I was waiting for the next video, voilà, of the pneumatic press. Voilà, so here's the pneumatic press. So if you have never seen a machine like this, inside you have like a big inner tube, which will grow step by step, because we always start slowly with a low pressure around 0.2 bars, and step by step we will increase. And as you can see, the juice is collected in a bucket, the stainless steel buckets, voilà, here, and after it will be pumped in the direction of one tank for the decantation. One thing you have seen when you have seen the harvester emptying the harvest and the carbonic ice, it's also a place where we're going to use a lot of carbonic ice cube as much as we can to make sure, because it's a step where you can have a lot of oxidation. And instead of being obliged to use a lot of sulfites, with a carbonic gas, you have a way which is more natural and to preserve the juice against the oxidation. And then when we're going to pump them in the direction of the tank, in fact, inside the pipe, we also had some gas, which is nitrogen, to make sure that there's a minimum of oxygen. In fact, it will be, voilà. So here is the decantation or fermentation tank you can use for the both process. As you can see on this tank is made with a big part with the cold water, and Nick will show you the cooling system. In fact, in this tank, we can I won't say fridge, but the light of the picture is not fine. Well, here is the cooling system. So it's like a big air conditioning, and we can send some water at the right temperature to make sure that we will keep this juice cold. It's about between 10 and 12 or 13 Celsius degrees for the decantation. Voilà. And with this machine, we send water to the, you see the stainless steel pipe on the left side, and this water will run through all around the tank, voilà, to make sure that we keep the temperature low. Voilà. As low as, not as low as we can, because if it's too cold, the decantation won't be as good as it should be. Voilà. And the decantation is takes around 2 days. So we keep this juice during 2 days, and then after we're going to pump the clear juice in one other tank, and we will add the yeast to start the fermentation. And at this step, if you look at me on my screen, I use a little tool which is like this, which is called a mustimetre. So I don't know if you see everything on it, but so here it's water, but it might be juice. And when you put it inside, depending on how much of sugar you have, you will have an idea about the density. So what it could be in terms of alcohol after the fermentation. And during the fermentation process, this level every day will decrease. So I can check where we are regarding the fermentation process. Voilà. And also it gives me an information which is important, the temperature, so I can control. What is important during the winemaking process is to make sure that the temperature doesn't increase too much, What I mean is, if you let the nature do during the fermentation, it will increase, and there's a moment when you will kill all the flavors. To give you a good base of comparison, when we do a white or a rosé wine, we expect to have a temperature of fermentation around 16 Celsius degrees, and we can play a bit with this temperature. When we are talking about red wine, it's more like 26. Voilà. And of course, if you don't control the temperature, it will grow up to 20 for the white or 22, and you lose everything, because all the flavors which are appearing at a low temperature will be burned if you let them, if you let the fermentation increase to something which is too high. The fermentation of a white and a rosé.
Can I just chip in with a question? So, do you leave any stems or skins with the juice when they're in the fermentation tank?
Alors, not at all. No, because it's never allowed. In fact, technically, it's impossible. If you talk about a white and a rosé, no stem at all. If you talk about the red, it could be possible to have a little percentage of stem. It's less important for the red because, as you know, it's not the same period. We harvest 3 or 4 weeks after the whites, and most of the time the stems are mature. The only thing which could happen is in the pneumatic press, for some grapes, we could keep a part of the stem to create like a drain inside the pneumatic press, and to improve the quality of the pressing process. But it's only in the pneumatic press. It will never be in the still in the final tank. Voilà.
And he's also asking about the skins. So the skins we wouldn't, because you've pressed it, there'll be no skins in there either. But for the reds, they will. The skins are essential, so they would not be pressed. So you put it with the skins in the tank first and press later, effectively.
In fact, if you don't know this information, in fact, the juice which is inside the berry is white, even for the red grapes. So when you press, you can have, you can make a white wine with any kind of grapes. I always use the comparison with champagne. Champagne is made with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is used to produce the Burgundy red wines. So you can make a white wine with a red grape. But if you want to make a red wine, you will need to have a fermentation with the skin and the juice together, of course. Nick will probably show you one red tank. Yes, here we are. So this tank is full of skin and juice, and the guy is making a hole because there's one thing also to understand. It's with the red wine, with the red wine process, we have one problem, which is during the fermentation, when the sugar becomes alcohol, the yeast create also some gas, some carbonic gas. And with the gas, in fact, it increases the pressure inside the tank, and the skin are at the top of the tank. So if you don't do anything, in reality, you have almost no contact between the skin and the juice. The first issue will be the fact that you need to extract what is inside the skin. And the second thing is that if you let the skin becoming dry, it will become like vinegar. So every day, you're obliged to keep the skin wet. So when you have a big tank, it's only with a pump. So you pump the juice from the bottom and you put it at the top, or you empty entirely the tank, and after you send back the wine, which is the juice, which is becoming wine, inside the tank. But when it's a small tank, and when we talk about the Baron range or things like this, what we do is we do everything manually. So here you have a guy which is making a hole inside the skin. It's about 50 centimeters deep, the skin, and the juice will be on the after it, and you will crush everything by hand. Voilà. You have to be careful because it's full of gas. So when you do that, you always have a second guy. As you can see, there's another guy near the first one, and this guy checks that the other one is not breathing gas or something like this, because you could die. So, of course, we are always careful. We always have 2 guys which are working when we do this process. Right, and finally, we don't have a...
Who wants to click as a modern modern piece of kit?
Yeah,
so that's
so
a PGR has
this...
been done for centuries, whereas this is now modern winemaking.
Alors, this is a little machine which will help us to have the right quantity of oxygen inside the tank during the fermentation. So we call it kicker. So with this machine, we can send a little percentage of oxygen, which will help the yeast to do the fermentation. And we can set it as we want. But you talk about really tiny quantities of oxygen that you send inside the tank. You talk about milliliters during 1 hour, and voila. But with this machine, we can manage exactly, and we can help the yeast to work, because even if you expect to have a minimum of oxidation, the yeast need oxygen to work and to change and to eat the sugar and to change it in alcohol. So at the middle of the process, this machine will help us to guarantee that the fermentation will go at the end.
Brilliant. Concern of time, shall we just show then what you do at the end of that, just to have the finished wine?
Yes, exactly. So here is a filter that we're going to use to clear everything inside the liquid before the bottling. And it's also something that we can use during the decantation for the little volume which is left at the bottom of the tank. And voila. So in fact, you have, well, it's difficult to explain, but the juice or the wine will arrive on the left and will go outside on the other side. You have one with a mirror on the right side of the picture, and with the pressure, it will give us information about how clean are the filtration part, how clean is the filtration part. It's an obligation to use the filter. If you don't want, if I don't want to see someone calling me or Nick and say we have sediment in the bottle.
Very good. Concern of time, we've had 40 minutes. Shall we call it a day there on the wine? We could cover the winemaking process in more detail. We haven't really gone into aging of the wine. We haven't done malolactic fermentation, so there's probably more to do another day. But maybe that's a good time. Any final questions on the harvest? Oh, quickly, Edward, do you want to give us a quick, very short update on the 2020 harvest, which we're very excited about, and then we need to move on to the tasting.
Yes, and after we taste the 3 wines. So, we are quite happy for plenty of reasons, but the main, we did a very good harvest. For Saint-Hilaire, it's a bit exceptional because that's the largest one for the last 15 years, with a reasonable yield. I mean, it's not too high, but it was correct, with a good maturity, nice volume in terms of whites, a smaller volume in terms of red, but we are not expecting the same yield for the red, with no problem of water, no lack of water during the maturity, no big rain during the harvest. So it's a very promising vintage. Voilà. We produce something like 1,350 hectoliters of wine. So that's the equivalent of 180,000 bottles this year, which is quite nice. And so the young vines just start to produce, so they are not on the top at the maximum of production, and we're not expecting to let them producing too much. We want to have something. They are young, and I want to make sure that they don't produce too much, because after you will pay later on the future yield every year. So voilà. No, a very nice harvest. Really
quality. What's your take on
quality and
quality this year?
Pretty good. Everything is not perfect as usual, but quite good because it's a really well balanced vintage with a nice malic acid level, higher than the previous years. So it will be helpful for the final product and the balance of the wine because the freshness is essential for wine. And in terms of reds, we have been able to wait a long time to get a perfect maturity. So the vintage in rare, in terms of red wine, is really promising. I think that we have probably produced the best Syrah of the last decade. For the Grenache, I can't tell you now because it's under fermentation, so it's a bit soon, but I'm quite confident. Cabernet Sauvignon will be a very good vintage, and the Merlot is a good one. Maybe not the best, to be honest, but a good vintage. So no, it's a regular quality for each grape. It's really nice. Voilà. My doubt at the beginning was on the rosé, and finally the final result is good. So well, I've been a bit stressful with the rosé because it was a bit difficult to get the perfect maturity on the Cinsault, but finally we achieved our objective. So no, I'm happy. I think I'm happy, but I think that Nick is happy.
We're both happy. We're always happy, Edward. We're always happy. Brilliant. Well, I'm going to just go and get my wines. Any last questions, feel free just to ask while I go and just get them from the fridge, and then we'll move on to the tasting, starting with the 18.
Well, I just remind you a few things about the tasting before we start, just to help you to, voilà. So one thing, when we do a tasting, doesn't matter if it's a vertical tasting as we do today, you always have 3 steps. The first one will be the color, the second one will be the smell, and the third one will be the mouth. And we will try to focus on each step to understand, to see the difference between the 3 vintages. Of course, each vintage is different, but what is important here is to see the evolution due to the aging. So let me open one bottle. So what we will do is we will start with 2018, so the youngest, please, if it's possible. So 2018 is not for sale in reality, because actually we sell 2017. And I think that you will understand the reason why we always try to keep the wine few years before we sell them. When it's a wine which is produced to be a long aging wine, of course. Voilà. So if you open 2018, one thing you can see in the glass, voilà, of course it's yellow, but if you see, you still have a bit of green reflex. When we will open the other vintages, you will see that the green reflex have disappeared. So you have a yellow color, which is given by 2 things. The fact that this wine is aged in barrels. So the yellow color is given by a bit of tannins, a bit of oxidation, because in barrel you always have a bit of oxidation. And so that's the reason why also we are choosing the right grape to age in barrel, because the Chardonnay is a grape which loves oxidation, which is quite strange. That's the opposite of the Vermentino, which will be killed by the oxidation. About the smell, in 2018, the first impression will be the vanilla given by the hook. The vanilla flavors are really intense.
Let's do the poll. Yeah. So if I don't know how many people are tasting, some are not, I think. We have a little online poll for what aromas people are getting here.
Yes, let's do it so everybody can answer.
So you can choose as many as you like. It's not just one. Any of the aromas you can detect there.
What will be interesting is because we're going to do that for the free wines, just to compare the results. Because as you know, it's exactly the same wine, but with what is the dominant flavor of each vintage.
Okay, we haven't got many people doing the online polling, so I'll leave it another few seconds before we close the poll. For some reason I'm not allowed to vote, so Edward, you can't vote either, can you?
I did it.
Oh, you can vote, can you? I can't. It doesn't allow
Yes, I did.
the host. Okay, we've got a few
All
votes.
right.
Okay.
So as you can see on 2018, you can see that the vanilla is dominant. And the floral and the flowers also. The vanilla is only the oak aging. It's not something which is appearing, which is not. It's not something which is natural in a wine. It's always given by the aging. You will see with the 2017 and the 2016, when you will open the bottles, that this intensity of vanilla will decrease year after year. So at the beginning, after 1 or 2 years, it's always really intense. But if your wine is powerful enough, with enough concentration, there's a moment when the wine will be in front of the oak instead of being behind the oak. In terms of mouth, so what I like also to do, if you can smell the glass when it's empty, I'm sorry to oblige you to empty your glass, but
I put too much in mine. I'm going to have to find a spittoon.
But it's not the same flavors. The vanilla is almost gone. It's almost like a butter. You have a kind of creamy and butter flavors which are appearing, which are the result of the oxidation. And as long as you will do it, you will see that the vanilla flavors will disappear slowly, but at the end they will be gone. So what is nice now is to try to compare. So you can see that it is a wine which is really rich. When it arrives in the mouth, the middle of the mouth is full, almost for the moment, almost heavy, but the end of the mouth is maybe finished a bit short for the moment because the oak for the moment is a bit dominant. If you open 2017 and you compare, you will be surprised and you will discover that there's a moment when the wine will be over the oak. So
are we tasting? Sorry, I was just out of the room for a moment. Are we tasting 17 now?
Alors, we start with 2018 and we go on 2017.
Now on the 17. So I'll start the poll. So I'll restart the poll.
Yes.
And same questions, but for the 17.
Exactly.
One of the things I have to say I've gone wrong with mine. Mine are too cold. They're just from the fridge. I should have taken them out 10 minutes ago, and it really makes a big difference. With a wine like this, it needs to be a little bit warmer, really, and I've mucked up.
Alors, if you compare with 2018, the oak intensity is lower. It starts to reveal other flavors like floral flowers, not really honey flavors, but the hook start to become behind instead of being the dominant smell. I don't know how to say. It's creamy or butter. There's a very specific aroma in the Chardonnay, which is like fresh butter. As you can see also, there's much more flavors at the end of the mouth. Instead of finishing short, because everything is eaten by the hook, start to be much more complex, and the aftertaste is longer. In fact, 2018, which for personally that I consider that as a better vintage than 2017, the difficulty for the final customer. You have seen nobody wrote vanilla. Apple is me. That's funny. It's voilà. So when you reply to the survey, the vanilla has disappeared. Even if, in fact, the vanilla is still here, but that's not anymore the dominant flavor of the wine. But it's still not. I'm waiting to see with the final one, which was 2016, which got the gold medal at the best Chardonnay of the world, to see what you find. And I'm almost sure that you will be.
What is creating the almondy? What is creating the almondy sort of aromas and flavors? Because I'm getting that quite strongly in the 17. Is that related to the barrel, or is that something else?
Yes, it's related to the barrel and a bit to a certain kind of oxidation, a soft oxidation. But the end of the mouth is much more complex than the 2018. And the balance is better, but it's normal because we are never expecting. With the Baron Chardonnay, you need a minimum of 3 years before the wine become, I would say, drinkable in terms of enjoying something which is elegant with a good balance between intensity and complexity of aromas. And the best will be the 2016 because you will see something which is really perfect to drink now. And if you arrive at the 2016, so you can see the color, which is much more intense than the previous vintages. It's a really deep yellow. The smell, the vanilla is entirely gone. It's only the honey, I would say, is the dominant flavors. So, of course, you still feel the hook, but the hook has been integrated by the wine. And in the mouth, it's rich, large in the middle of the mouth, very complex aftertaste. Again, the honey, a bit of exotic fruit which is appearing, which is really unusual for Chardonnay, but not from the south. It could appear intense, a very long aftertaste. I hope that everybody agrees. Voilà. So, if you want to reply on.
Oh, we did. Yeah, I think you've told us all the answers now, so we know what we have to say.
I'm sorry.
I'm still getting a little bit of nut. Yes, I don't know who voted that. I'm getting a little bit of almond still. Yeah.
Yeah. But you always, alors, your wine is probably too fresh, too cold.
I think, yes, it's too cold. Yeah, that's my mistake. Yeah.
Very much at the end, it seems to be more oaked. You mean, Steve, you mean which one? The first, the second, I forgot to reply to.
That was the last one. The more oaked, the final one, the 16.
Uh-huh. Is it really hooked, or more like you can turn on your microphone if you want, Steve.
Just one second. So Cheryl, I see you just joined, and I think there may be a time zone problem because we're just finishing, I'm afraid. Don't know if you can hear yet or not, but we're again, it was 5 to 6 UK time, 6 to 7 French time.
Maybe oaked was the wrong word. It just seemed at the end it was a different, very different taste towards the end of the tasting on the 16.
Yeah. In fact, you have also the time, because 2016 is a 4-year-old wine. So you always have, with the cork, you always have a bit of oxidation, which will change the flavors, which will reveal other flavors, like the honey flavors, which always appear only if you have an oxidation time, which is about 1, 2, or 3 years. The clicker, if I want to help a wine to be more ready before, one option could be to use the clicker before the bottling to reveal all the flavors, but I'm gonna kill the capacity of aging of this wine. So it's a shame. It's much better to wait until. Me personally, I really enjoy 2016. Obviously, there's another thing which is important. Baron Chardonnay is a wine which has to be drunk when you eat. It's not a wine for aperitif. It's a wine which is really complex, really intense, with a big concentration of flavors. It's not something which is made to drink on its own on the summertime near a swimming pool. It's more something that you will pair with a nice. No, but if you want to do that, please buy your Vermentino, which is made for. Voilà. No, the Baron Chardonnay is something which is complex, intense. We have pretty good results and pretty nice awards, like the best Chardonnay of the world, where we got the gold medal. So best Chardonnay of the world is only a competition where you will find enologist and sommelier. So, and we are always awarded at the best Chardonnay of the world. We are one of the most regular domain because we have been awarded in 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. So it's a pretty nice reason. No, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Voilà.
And question on how long they will continue to improve and drink well before they get too old.
Alors, I think that a Baron Chardonnay needs 3 years to be ready to drink. And after, the question is to say, will it improve or not? With the Baron Chardonnay, you can keep them more, something like 2 or 3 years more, without any risk, because they will continue to. 2016, it has stopped for me. We'll stay at this stop during the next 2 years, and there's a moment when it will start to decrease. But no, easily, as it's written on the back, voilà, 5, 6 years, it's not a problem. After, it will be difficult. I will open probably soon a bottle of 2015, and we have a few stock of 2013 left. So I would like to see how they are now. Last time I drank
years ago, I came across in the UK an 8-year-old one, and of course it's all personal taste, and I'm sure an expert wouldn't have agreed with me, but I thought it was fabulous. It was really intense and honeyed, and you know, just fabulous wine to me. But I think probably an expert would have said it was lacking in its acidity or structure or whatever over that time. But for my personal taste, I think it can. I like it a little bit older, to be honest.
It's even an expert will never compare something which is young to something which has been aged for 5 or 6 years. It will not be focused on the same things. For example, the honey flavors, if they are still here in the Chardonnay, it means that the wine has a good balance of acidity to be aged. So that's something which is normal in a Chardonnay. And everybody, if you drink a whole Meursault, it will be full of honey flavors, for example. So now we have a nice capacity. Our wine are a bit exceptional because it's in the south. There's not so much wineries which are able to produce wine which could age 6, 7, or 8 years. What is written on the back label is 5 years, because it's for us it's a guarantee. 5 years, we are sure that the wine will be perfect. Obviously, 7 to 8 years, as Nick said. Maybe not all vintages. To give you an idea, I think that 2016 might be able to age 3 or 4 years more without any problem. The same for 2018. I'm maybe less confident about 2017, which will be probably at its top within the next 2 years, and will probably decrease after. 2017 was a more difficult vintage than 2018, for example. The most promising one for me is 2018, which will be probably fabulous in 3 years. Will start to become really good next year when we will start to sell it, and really, really, really able to age for a while.
I'm concerned on time. We promised that we would finish at 6, and it's actually 6 minutes past 6 here. So I think we have covered all our content. We're very happy to keep going for a little bit longer. But again, if you're heading off for dinner or whatever, don't feel obliged to hang on any longer. It's been fabulous having you all involved. Question on the Reds. Yeah, we could have another session on the Reds one day. We just felt it was too much for one day, but we could wait a month and have a go on the Cabernet Merlot. What do you think,
Yeah.
Edward?
Well, we've got the Reds.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We've got the Reds,
Yeah,
so we can keep them and do it on another occasion. That'd be nice.
Great.
okay,
Let's
so
do that.
well, so on the next one, what we can do is maybe a shorter time on the technical part, but maybe explaining the aging, things like these, the barrels, and voila.
Yeah, we
And,
could pick up. Yeah, we could pick up because we didn't do the malolactic fermentation part for the Reds,
No, exactly.
did we? And cover that barrel aging and so on a little bit in the beginning, and then a bit longer on the tasting, on the vertical tasting. Yeah, that'd be great. So
Exactly.
we do that in November sometime.
That would be great.
Fantastic. Any Cheryl, I'm conscious that you've joined right at the end, so sorry for that. What we did do, and I was a bit incompetent because I missed the first 5 minutes, but we have recorded it, and I think there was 6 or 7 people were asking if they could see that. So Cheryl, I need to figure out the technology of that and how to get that to you. But if you're interested, we could share that recording with you so you can catch up on what you missed.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah,
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Super. Any final questions? Happy to keep going a bit longer if anybody has any questions, but don't want to keep people hanging on if not. Steve, anything from you?
No, but if you could send me a copy, or maybe you could put it on YouTube, and then anybody can access it.
Yeah. Look into that.
My wife's not here today, but I can always take her through 3 wines on another night,
Yeah.
or later on. She's doing yoga at the moment, so she didn't want to drink before yoga.
Actually, I have a question, Frederick. Is there any value in opening the Baron Chardonnay early at all? You know, would you open it half an hour before dinner, or does it just not matter?
I would say yes. For example, if you want to open a bottle of 2018 now, I would say yes, do it, because the wine is a bit young and it will reveal the flavors. On the 2016, I would say no. It's perfect as it is now. So it has 16. Is at its start. So why do you want to oxidate more this wine? It's a shame. 2018 needs to reveal these flavors. So a bit of oxidation. Even you can try to carafe for 2018, for example, just 30 minutes before. It will really improve the wine, but no on the 2016. And 2017 is in the middle. You choose if you want to do it or not.
And do those, you know, those kind of gizmos that you get these days that do, it's like a carafe, but it puts it through a kind of little aeration thing on the way. Do those work? Do you think they're good?
Alors, I would say yes on young wines and red wines. I'm not so happy with the whites. It depends the style of the wine. I tried a tool like this, for example, with the Vermentino. It killed the flavors. But on the Advocate Chardonnay, it really improves the wine. You can use a tool like this if the wine is young and with flavors which are hidden by or the hook or the concentration. If they need to be revealed, yes. But when you are happy with one wine, and you say, as an example, with the 2016, I think everybody enjoyed the 2016. If you do that, you might kill some of the flavors.
But what you're saying is one of those little gadgets that has a kind of like a wheel or something inside it, there's more likely to aerate more effectively than just putting it in a carafe.
The problem with the carafe is the fact that it's awful to say, but normally if you want to use a carafe in the right way, you should, me personally, you know, because you are delicate, you let the wine running through all the glass, and in fact you create a big oxidation when you do that, which is a shame if the wine is a bit old, because you will kill the flavors. And you will be surprised when I say this, but the way to do it is to return the bottle and to splash the bottle inside the tank, because you will have less oxidation. I know that it could surprise everybody, but in fact, when you are careful, you have all the liquid which is flat on the glass, running through the glass, and you have a big surface of wine which is in contact with the oxygen.
But I guess you can't do that with a red if it might have a sediment, because you'll end up with the sediment in the carafe. Yeah.
Yes, of course. But it's a bit difficult. With the red wines, all red wines, I agree. Even if personally I don't decant wine, red wine which are more than 10 years old, I never decant them. I'm careful when I put the wine in the glass. I prefer. Voilà. But on the young wines, why not?
Temperature question on what's the best temperature do you think for the Baron Chardonnay?
Alors, not too cold. It's about 10 Celsius degrees. I just
quite a lot warmer than the fridge, as I screwed up today. Yeah,
even 11 is correct.
Yeah, I've
not
really noticed the difference where I've taken them straight from the fridge, and that was a mistake. It makes a big difference, I think. Super. Conscious of time. Fantastic. Any last questions, everybody? You think, are we done? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Edward. Appreciate, always enjoy your insightful and interesting chats and talk us through the process. Thank you for that. And thank you everybody for coming and joining us and supporting us and buying the wine. That was, it's very kind of you to do that. And we'll see you in that case for November. We'll do a November one with the Reds.
Yeah, we're doing one in November.
Try and get them on
time. We'll work on the YouTube. Yeah, I'll figure out if we can get that on YouTube or not and apologies for the missing first 5 minutes.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Right, thank you. I know you can't speak, but good to see you. You were with us. Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Claude. Bye bye, Cheryl. Bye bye, Michael. Bye bye, Steve.